We put so much weight on that, the I do at the wedding. It's huge, right? The big promise. But have you ever thought about the I don't that kind of has to come first? The bit where you say I don't to old ways, old loyalties, maybe? That quiet step back seems, well, essential for the I do to actually stick, to build something strong. If you skip that part, maybe the whole thing's a bit shaky from the start.
You're welcome to our engaging conversation segment on Healthy Relationship Plug. Today, we're diving into something really core to marriage, especially for Christian couples trying to build, a really solid, peaceful home. It's this idea of leaving and cleaving.
Mm.
And it's not just about packing boxes, is it? It's deeper, like a heart shift, a change in where you stand.
Exactly. It's fundamental. It's right there from the beginning. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Simple words, maybe, but wow, the weight behind them.
It's not just friendly advice then. Not at all. It's presented as, well, a divine instruction, a blueprint from God on how marriage is designed to function, how it's meant to, thrive.
It's interesting how easily it gets missed, maybe, or just misunderstood. We talk about money problems, communication breakdowns, infidelity, all the big, obvious marriage struggles.
Right, the usual suspect.
What could be that sometimes, maybe often, the real friction, the underlying instability actually comes from not getting this first step right, from not fully grasping this leaving and cleaving thing.
I think that's spot on. Honestly, I see it all the time. So many marriages are struggling, not necessarily because of those headline issues, but because this foundational instruction wasn't fully acted upon. A man or a woman, too, might physically move out, get married, say all the right words.
Check the boxes.
Yeah, check the boxes. But they haven't truly left in the way this scripture intends. They've kind of dragged the old family dynamics, the old loyalties, right into the new marriage. And, well, that inevitably causes problems. It creates this friction point right at the foundation.
So when it says one flesh, it's painting a much bigger picture than just physical intimacy.
Oh, absolutely. Physical union is part of it, a vital part, yes.
Right.
But one flesh encompasses so much more. It's talking about a complete unity, spiritual, emotional, mental. It creates a new entity.
Yeah.
This union is designed to become the primary relationship, superseding all others.
Superseding even the bond with parents?
Yes, that's the radical part, isn't it? Before marriage, your deepest connection, your primary loyalty, is usually to your family of origin, parents, siblings. But marriage creates this new sovereign unit. It's not just two people living together, it's the birth of a new family. Your thoughts, goals, decisions, your spiritual journey, it all becomes intertwined. You're not acting just for me anymore, but for us.
That really reframes things. I remember talking with a couple, they were just constantly tense, always feeling like they're defending their choices, battling outside opinions that were seeping in. And it took them a while, but they eventually realized so much of their conflict wasn't even between them directly. It was rooted in these unspoken external loyalties. The husband, for example, was still sort of mentally running big decisions past his mom for approval without even realizing it fully.
Classic example.
And the wife felt well, like she was always coming second,
Right,
an
yeah.
outsider in her own marriage almost. It's like they built the house but forgot to cut the ropes, tying it to the old family property. Just inherently wobbly.
That's a perfect picture.
Yeah.
Because the one flesh union is meant to be exclusive in its primary allegiance. It needs its own space, its own foundation, spiritually and emotionally sealed off in a sense. If that boundary isn't clear, other loyalties will just naturally compete for that central space. And competition leads to instability.
Okay, so let's break down that first part then, leaving. When Genesis says, a man shall leave his father and his mother, what does that actually mean in practice? Does it mean you just cut ties, stop talking to your parents? That sounds harsh and doesn't really square with honoring your parents, does it?
That's such a crucial point to clarify right away. No, leaving absolutely does not mean cutting off family or disrespecting or dishonoring your parents. Honoring parents remains a clear command throughout Scripture.
Okay, good. That's important.
Very. What leaving signifies is a fundamental redefinition of your primary loyalty. It's about consciously, intentionally realigning your life's priorities. It's acknowledging, both inside yourself and to the world, that your number one human allegiance has shifted. It's no longer your parents, it's your spouse and the new family you are building together.
So it's a shift in ranking almost.
Exactly. It's an
Sure.
emotional and mental departure, primarily. Sometimes physical distance helps, but it's the internal shift that's key. You're moving out from under the direct authority and primary emotional orbit of your family of origin. Think about graduating college. You're still an alum, you still care about the school, you might go back for homecoming, right? But your day-to-day life, your main focus, your primary commitment has shifted. It's now your job, your own apartment, your independent life. You've left being a student. You wouldn't check in with your favorite professor before making every decision at your new workplace.
Right, that would be weird. Your boss is your boss now.
Precisely. Your primary professional loyalty has shifted. In marriage, your primary life loyalty shifts to your spouse. You're establishing a new headquarters, if you will.
So leaving is like drawing a clear line in the sand, putting up a sign saying, new management here, primary relationship established.
That's a great way to put it. This deliberate act of leaving creates the necessary, the vital space for the new marriage to actually grow and flourish on its own terms without competition. It's like clearing a building site.
Yeah.
You can't build a strong, independent house if the ground is still cluttered with stuff from the old structure or if other buildings are encroaching on your plot.
Makes sense. You need clear ground.
You need clear ground. The marriage needs its own sovereign territory, emotionally, mentally, decisionally free from the constant oversight or influence of the previous generation. It needs room to breathe, to find its own rhythm, its own identity.
Okay, that clarifies leaving a lot. But what happens when that doesn't really occur? When the leaving is incomplete? What kinds of cracks start showing up in the marriage foundation then? What problems bubble up?
Oh, the consequences are pretty significant, and often they start subtly but grow over time.
Mm.
One of the most immediate and painful ones is that the wife often feels like she's constantly competing for her rightful place.
Competing with whom? His family.
Usually, yes, competing with his mother's influence, maybe his siblings' opinions, or just the general pull of the extended family. She might feel her voice doesn't carry the same weight. Decisions get made based on what mom would think or what my sister needs. She starts to feel secondary in her own home, in her husband's priorities.
That sounds incredibly isolating and frustrating for her.
It is.
Hmm.
Let's be blunt. No wife should ever feel like she's number two in her own marriage. God designed her to be a co-equal partner, the primary human relationship. When she constantly feels like she has to fight for that spot, it just erodes everything: trust, intimacy, her sense of security. It's soul-destroying, really.
Yeah, I can see that. It reminds me of that analogy you used, the co-captain whose first mate keeps radioing the old captain for instructions on how to steer the ship.
Exactly. Total chaos.
Leads to confusion, definitely.
And that's the second major consequence. Confusion about authority. Who's actually in charge here? Decisions that should be made between husband and wife, privately, intimately.
Mm-hmm.
They end up getting filtered through the extended family first. Let me just run this by my dad. Or
Yeah.
my mom suggested we should. It introduces all this external noise and opinion where there should be unity and shared decision-making.
So it undermines their ability to become a solid, independent unit.
Absolutely. It prevents them from developing their own way of doing things, their own shared wisdom.
Yeah.
It keeps them tethered, dependent. It's like trying to run a company where the board of directors keeps getting overruled by the previous CEO. Nothing solid gets built. And then thirdly, there's the subtle creep of emotional manipulation.
How does that look?
Well, it's often not malicious, maybe not even conscious sometimes, but you get those guilt trips, right? Things like, oh, you've changed so much since you got married, delivered with a sigh, or we never see you anymore, or is she keeping you from visiting?
Oof. Yeah, those kinds of comments.
Those comments, however innocently intended sometimes, put the man in a really difficult position. He feels torn, guilty if he prioritizes his wife, guilty if he doesn't. It divides his loyalty right down the middle.
Creates an internal tug of war.
Precisely. And that internal conflict weakens the marriage. It drains energy, creates tension,
Mm.
and makes the whole home feel less secure, less peaceful. It's a constant low-level stress.
So it's less like a sudden earthquake and more like a slow leak, water damage weakening the foundations over time.
That's a perfect way to put it, a slow, steady leak. Because when that essential boundary created by leaving isn't properly sealed, it creates this vulnerability. You could call it a spiritual leak even.
A spiritual leak. What do you mean by that?
Well, it means the marriage becomes more susceptible to negative influences, things that aim to divide and disrupt. Think of it like a crack in the wall of a house. It lets the cold air in, maybe pests, maybe dampness. Spiritually, when the leaving isn't complete, it creates an opening for divisive influences, misunderstandings that escalate, a sense of loneliness even when together, maybe even struggles that seem to come out of nowhere. It's like the protective covering God intends for the marriage isn't fully intact because the foundation itself is compromised. It leaves the couple exposed in ways a fully unified marriage isn't.
Wow. Okay, so leaving clears the ground, sets the boundary, seals the cracks. Then what about cleaving? If leaving creates the space, what does cleaving actively do in that space?
Cleaving. That's the positive action, the building phase. If leaving is about separation from, cleaving is about attachment to. The word itself, cleave, it means to cling tightly, to stick fast, to pursue, to hold on fiercely. It's a very active, very intentional, ongoing verb. It's not passive.
So it's not just, okay, we're married now. It's an active pursuit.
Absolutely. It means you don't just get married to her. You actively prioritize her, day in and day out. She becomes your primary human focus, your number one earthly assignment from God, your new home in a relational sense.
Your new home. I like that.
It's exactly that. And this priority has to be practical. It shows up in how you spend your time, where your money goes, whose needs get considered first in decisions, where your emotional energy is primarily invested. Her well-being, your shared life, comes before other demands or expectations.
So it's a daily, conscious choice, choosing her again and again, not just on the wedding day.
Every single day. And it involves standing with her and for her, even when it's tough. Even when it might ruffle feathers with your family of origin or friends.
Like defending her, you mentioned earlier.
Yes, defending her is part of it. Protecting her is part of it, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually too. It might mean setting those boundaries we talked about, even if they make people uncomfortable. It means saying, essentially, she and I are a unit now. Her perspective matters most here. Our shared decisions are final. Your wife isn't an add-on to your old life. She is your new life center. Your primary identity, your main allegiance, resides with her now.
That's a powerful commitment and sounds like it builds something incredibly strong.
It does. When a man truly gets this, when he actively cleaves, he creates a bond that is incredibly resilient. A bond that, well, the forces that seek to destroy families really struggle against, because it aligns with God's design. But look at the flip side. If he remains emotionally tied primarily to his parents or siblings, if that cleaving doesn't happen fully, well, it breeds confusion in the marriage. It creates distance between him and his wife, and it keeps that spiritual leak open, draining energy and focus away from where it's needed most. His marriage stays vulnerable, maybe even feels unfulfilled.
You mentioned the spiritual leak and how not leaving opens the door. You also touched on an adversary or enemy taking advantage of this. Can we zero in on that? Who or what walks through that door, and what are their tactics when a marriage isn't properly aligned through leaving and cleaving?
Yeah, this is where we see the spiritual reality behind marital struggles really clearly. The Bible speaks of an enemy, an adversary, whose goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. And marriage, being God's design and a reflection of Christ in the church, is a prime target. Now, this enemy knows he can't just bulldoze a marriage God has joined. It's too strong fundamentally.
So he uses subtler methods.
Exactly. He looks for cracks. He works to undermine it from within, usually by getting one or both partners to forget or neglect the foundational principles, the sacredness of the covenant. And one of his classic strategies is division. He wants to separate what God has joined. How does he do it in this context? First, by exploiting that incomplete leaving. He works to keep the man emotionally connected and prioritizing his family of origin, while the wife feels increasingly neglected and secondary.
Using good things like family ties for a bad outcome.
Precisely. He twists those natural affections. He uses the man's bond with his mom or siblings to drive a wedge between husband and wife. The wife feels unseen, unheard, like she's constantly fighting for his attention within her own marriage. The husband's emotional energy gets split, and the marriage itself is starved.
Starved for his primary attention and affection.
Yes. Secondly, the enemy uses external voices, often family, but sometimes friends or other influences, to override the wife's voice and wisdom within the marriage. Think about it. The wife has God-given intuition, insight into her home, her children, her husband. But if the husband is constantly giving more weight to his mother's opinion or his father's advice,
Then the wife's input gets dismissed.
it gets dismissed, devalued. The enemy loves this because it silences her God-given contribution, breeds resentment in her, makes her feel powerless, and ultimately shuts down her desire to even try to contribute. It kills partnership. And thirdly, closely related, is getting the man to seek his primary validation and sense of identity outside the marriage. Your spouse is meant to be your primary mirror, your confidant, your biggest cheerleader.
Your safe place.
Your safe place, exactly. But if a man is always running back to mom or dad for approval, or needs his buddy's validation more than his wife's, or finds his whole identity in his job, it prevents that deep, soul-level intimacy and shared identity from ever really forming with his wife.
So the enemy just thrives in that kind of misalignment.
Absolutely thrives. Division, interference, discord, they aren't random. They flourish when the marriage isn't properly lined according to God's blueprint. Failing to leave and cleave is like leaving the front door unlocked and handing the keys to peace, intimacy, and protection over to anyone or anything that wants to cause trouble.
That's a really stark image. Okay, so this is clearly critical. How can a husband listening right now do an honest heart check? How can he know if he's truly left and cleaved? Are there practical questions he can ask himself?
Yes, definitely. And these aren't about judgment, they're about awareness and growth. It requires real honesty. First, a really direct question. Do you consistently defend your wife, especially in front of your family, or do you tend to let critical or undermining comments slide to avoid conflict?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Confrontation can be hard.
It can be, but it's not about picking fights. It's about presenting a united front. If someone, say, criticizes her cooking or her parenting style, even subtly, do you gently but firmly step in? Do you say something like, actually, Mom, we love how Jane does that, or we've decided together that this is best for our family?
Rather than just staying silent?
Or worse, silently agreeing or even joining in later. Silence often feels like agreement, leaving your wife feeling completely alone and unprotected. Your immediate verbal solidarity in that moment speaks volumes about who comes first.
That's a powerful indicator of allegiance, isn't it?
Huge. Second question. When making major decisions about finances, moves, kids, career, do you prioritize your wife's opinion and input above all others? Or do you find yourself needing that external stamp of approval, especially from parents?
It doesn't mean never getting advice, right?
Not at all. Seeking wisdom is good, but whose opinion carries the ultimate weight in your household decisions? Is it your partner in this one flesh union? Or is there still a sense that mom or dad's view is somehow more authoritative? If you constantly feel the need to check with them before deciding with your wife, that's a red flag. Third, are you willing and able to create necessary boundaries with your family of origin, even if it causes temporary discomfort or friction?
Give me an example of a boundary like that.
Okay, maybe it's limiting unsolicited advice on parenting. Maybe it's saying no to a demanding expectation for visits that consistently drains your own family time. Maybe it's establishing that certain topics are private to your marriage and not open for family discussion.
Things that might change the old dynamic.
Exactly. Setting boundaries often shakes things up. If you find yourself consistently avoiding setting these kinds of limits because you're afraid of upsetting someone, it suggests you haven't fully left. You're prioritizing their comfort over the health and autonomy of your marriage.
That takes courage, especially with long-standing family patterns.
It really does. And a final, very sensitive question. Do you share private details about your marriage disagreements, financial specifics, intimate struggles with your family of origin without your wife's explicit knowledge and consent?
Breaching marital privacy.
Precisely. Your marriage should be the safest, most confidential space. Oversharing, even with good intentions, erodes that trust. It makes your wife feel exposed and betrayed. It's like opening up your private bedroom to public viewing. Some things are meant only for the two of you. Ultimately, maybe the simplest gut check for a husband is this. Does your wife feel secure in her place? Does she consistently feel like she's number one in your heart and home? Or does she feel like she's still fighting for that position?
Her feeling, her experience is a key indicator.
It's a huge indicator. If she feels insecure, overlooked, or in competition, that's a sign the cleaving isn't complete. There's still work to do. I knew a guy, great guy, but he'd automatically go to his mom's house every day after work. Habit.
Even after getting married.
Yep. His wife felt totally sidelined, always waiting, always second. Their marriage was really struggling. Once he finally grasped this leaving principle, he made a conscious shift. He started coming home first, prioritizing time with his wife, making decisions with her. It wasn't easy, caused some initial awkwardness with his mom, but his marriage, it absolutely transformed. Peace, partnership, it blossomed.
That's a powerful story. It really highlights that this isn't just a one-time thing you do when you get married. It sounds more like a continuous commitment.
You absolutely nailed it. That's perhaps the most critical understanding. Leaving and cleaving isn't a checkbox you tick on your wedding day and then forget about. It is a continuous, day-by-day choice.
An ongoing decision.
Yes. You choose your wife again today. You choose her again tomorrow. You choose her in the small things and the big crises through every season of life. It's an active, living commitment that needs constant tending. And crucially, this choice isn't just made in the privacy of your heart or home. It's demonstrated publicly. It's choosing her even when it costs you something. Maybe social comfort, maybe navigating a difficult conversation with family, maybe saying no to an old expectation that clashes with your new unity.
Standing firm together even when it's awkward.
Even when it's awkward, maybe especially when it's awkward, that's when the commitment really shows its strength. It
Hmm.
might mean missing a family event because your spouse needs you. It might mean gently correcting a relative who oversteps.
That requires real strength of character, especially when those family bonds are so deep.
It does. But the payoff is immense. When a man fully embraces this ongoing choice, this daily recommitment to leaving and cleaving, he slams the door shut on so much potential trouble. He shuts out manipulation, division, that spiritual interference we talked about. His actions, his consistent prioritizing of his wife send a clear message. This marriage is solid. This unit is protected. Negative influences are not welcome here. He's actively maintaining that spiritual boundary around his home.
Building a fortress, brick by brick, day by day.
That's a great image. And again, just to be crystal clear, this isn't about being harsh or cutting off your roots. You still honor your parents. You love your siblings. You respect your family history.
It's about the hierarchy.
It's about the Goddardine hierarchy. Those relationships are important, valuable, but they now exist within the framework where your wife holds the primary position. She's your partner, your co-ruler in the new kingdom of your home. She comes first.
And when that unity is established and maintained, there's a promise attached, isn't there? You mentioned Psalm 133.
Yes, Psalm 133. It's such a beautiful picture. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. While it speaks of broader community, the principle holds powerfully true for marriage, the most intimate human community. Where there is that deep, established unity born from true leaving and active cleaving, God himself commands his blessing.
He commands it, not just suggests it.
Commands it. That blessing looks like peace that passes understanding, joy even in trials, resilience you didn't know you had, protection, fruitfulness in every area. Unity isn't just a nice goal, it's the master key. It unlocks God's favor and power in your marriage like nothing else. It truly is your greatest strength as a couple.
Wow, that really brings it all together. What an absolutely vital conversation this has been. The power of a man truly leaving behind old primary loyalties to fully actively cleave to his wife. It's not just advice, it's the blueprint for an unbreakable, blessed marriage, a spiritual stronghold, really. It's about shaping your home according to God's beautiful original intent. Maybe, just maybe, as you're listening this week, you take a moment, perhaps together as a couple, ask yourselves, where could we strengthen our cleaving a little bit more? Are there any old strings, maybe subtle ones, that still need some gentle loosening? Not cutting, but, realigning, so that our primary energy, our core loyalty, is undeniably focused right here on us. Just thinking about that might open up some amazing peace. Thank you so much for joining us for this really essential conversation here on Healthy Relationship Plug. We truly hope it sparked some insight and maybe some renewed purpose for your own marriage. We'd love for you to keep these conversations going. Please subscribe. If you haven't already, share this with another couple you know who might really benefit from hearing this right now. And hey, leave us a review. Your feedback honestly helps us figure out what topics really matter most to you. Join us again next time for more conversations aimed at bringing clarity and strength to your most important relationships. Until then, please remember, your unity truly is your power.